Hello everyone, I hope you're doing alright. Today we're talking about the Combat Medic Commando. It's basically baby's first healer except with a giant cannon. Brief disclaimer as usual, I'm not an expert, I'm just a nerd. I play a lot of SWTOR, but if I miss anything of the course next 25 minutes, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to be sure to get back to you and pin your comment, and I'm sure your fellow players would be appreciative. Alright, let's talk about tertiary stats. Accuracy, don't need it. Get rid of all of it, you don't need it. Alacrity, 7.2% alacrity. And then throw literally everything else into crit, and you should be ready to rock and roll. For our tactical, the SC4 treatment scanner is going to be a supercharged generating machine. It's very, very nice. We take it pretty much every time. For our legendaries, Concentrated Fire is going to give you either free crits on your high impact bullet if you want to do damage, or on your back to Infusion if you want to do big healing very quickly. It's very nice. Random Charge is going to be helping us generate those supercharged cells, especially when we're just doing our passive healing. It's just good, all right? It just works. It just works. For our utilities here, Integrated Probe is going to be a flat 3% healing. It's hard to beat that. Charge Barrier is going to be helping us with our defense chance. Efficient Probe is going to help keep our trauma probes on both ourselves and our friends. It's pretty darn nice. I take Supercharged Clarity here, but I can see the case for the defensive of Diversion, or if you need the healing of Overclock, it's kind of up to you. Reflexive Shield is great in PvP. You can take it in PvE though. I personally like Cell Capacitor. It helps me with my heat management or my energy management because I really stink at not managing my energy efficiently, especially in this spec. Force March is great for mobility in PvE. You can take it in PvP though. Some people will choose to go with Adrenal Surge for the extra healing in PvP. Kind of pick your poison here. All three of these options, 68, are viable. I like Echoing Deterrence. It helps have a little bit of a cheese at your disposal. Some people will take Hold the Line when there's no need for the Reflect, and some people will take Cryo Grenade for the CC, especially when you're like, questing or doing PvP. It's kind of up to you. I like Echoing Deterrence though. It's just my personal preference. Finally, Trauma Stabilizers is really the only useful option here. You can take Paralytic Combat Stims in like PvP if you're having really serious energy management issues. However, you're going to lose out on a massive heal. So just take Trauma Stabilizers. All right, we're going to very quickly cover doing damage in this spec for those of you who are choosing to level as a healer, for which I will pray for you. Single target comes down to essentially 3 core abilities and then some fillers. The core abilities are Electronet, Full Auto, and High Impact Bolt. Full Auto we use pretty much on cooldown. It does like 40,000 damage. It's pretty darn nice, but it does have a fair bit of a cooldown here, so just hit it as often as possible. High Impact Bolt is supposed to do a whole lot of damage. However, you can tell right now the target is not vulnerable. How do we make the target vulnerable? We either stun the target or we apply a dot. So you're probably going to have a companion out if you're choosing to do DPS or to quest as a healer, which is madness. So they should be stunning the target or doing dots for you. However, we can also apply our own dots in the form of Electronet, which we should be spamming pretty much all the time. It does a whole bunch of damage. You can see now High Impact Bolt. It just works. We additionally have the option of using Plasma Grenade. Plasma Grenade is an AoE. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it applies a small minor dot to the target. You can see here, we'll throw a Plasma Grenade on the target. It's burning. We have a brief window when we can use our High Impact Bolt and get that little bit of burst damage off. However, there's going to be a whole bunch of time when you don't have your full auto, you don't have your High Impact Bolt. This is when we use our Charge Bolts, just pretty much spamming it over and over again. If you get down below like 70% cells though, you should spam Hammer Shots to make sure that we're not completely destroying our cells here. So one more time. Full Auto, fantastic ability. High Impact Bolt, which you need a dot on the target for, so spam those as often as possible. And then swap between Charge Bolts when you're above 70 cells, and then Hammer Shots when you're below it, and you should be ready to rock and roll in terms of single target. For AoE, things get a lot easier. We have Mortar Volley, which just does a whole bunch of damage, knocks down standard and weak targets. It's pretty fantastic. And then we fill with Hail of Bolts, and that's really all there is to it. It's not that hard. Doing DPS as a healer, they try not to make it too difficult for you. Speaking of healers, the primary thing we focus on is healing. Who would have guessed? Now, the healing mindset is both being proactive for upcoming damage and being reactive to the mistakes of your team. All right, so there's no such thing as like a healing rotation. The best thing that we can really do is understand how all of our abilities work together. All right, so let's talk about our healing abilities and how we could be making the most of them. The first thing we need to discuss is this ability right here called Supercharged Cell. Supercharged Cell converts 10 stacks of Supercharge to recharge 10 energy cells, so it's going to be a great way to be managing your energy just a little bit, and it's going to increase the healing done by 5%, which is pretty fantastic, and it's going to give Advanced Medical Probe no cooldown. for about, 8 seconds, which is our hardest hitting heal. We'll talk about those in a hot second. Essentially, we want to be smashing this as often as possible. It's going to help with our healing. It's going to help with our cell regeneration. It's going to give us a little burst potential. It's a very nice ability. Additionally, because of our legendary, it's going to give us free crits on our back to infusion. So essentially, we want to be smashing this as often as possible. But how do we get those 10 stacks? You can see here, if I hit the button, now all my stacks are gone. We have our little buffs. We can use all of our healing abilities. It's very, very nice. But how do I get back to those 10 stacks? Well, we have a couple of options here. The first option is our successive treatment. Successive treatment does a lot of healing very quickly in an AoE. How successive treatment work is that it will target one player or one companion, whatever you want to be healing. It's going to start healing them slowly over time for a total of 3,000 or 34,000 healing over the course of the next 2 seconds. However, every time it ticks, it will also heal an additional player. So it'll heal 2 players, and then it'll heal 3 players, and then it'll heal 4 players. It's pretty nice. So you can see here, we'll demonstrate between Vic and myself. We'll repair the astromech. Now Vic is getting healing, and now I'm getting healing. Essentially, it just does a whole bunch of healing very, very quickly in an AoE format. It's very nice, and it generates 4 stacks of supercharge. We want to be spamming successive treatment pretty much as often as possible. It has a good combination of single target heals alongside raid heals, alongside just generating a whole bunch of cells. You can see here, just in using 2 successive treatments, we now have our supercharged cell back. We want to be smashing it pretty much as often as possible. We mentioned some other abilities here after we use our supercharged cell. Let's talk about them. The first is going to be our back to infusion. Back to infusion is an instant cast ability. You hit it, boop, it does a fair bit of healing. You can see it just healed this repair astromech for like 35k. It's pretty nice. And then sometimes it'll leave this little preventative medicine on the target and give it periodic healing as well. It's just a whole bunch of healing for free. It's very, very nice. It also doesn't have a cast, so it can kind of be like your oh shoot button, boop, hit this, instant healing. Very nice. Additionally, we talked about how if you use Supercharged Cell, it's going to crit every single time. It's very, very nice. So you can see here 44k on top of the extra dot that happens afterwards. Pretty fantastic. And then it's going to make your Advanced Medical Probe instantly cast. So the interaction here is that if you use a back to infusion, your next Advanced Medical Probe will be instantly cast. But why is that important? Well, that's because Advanced Medical Probe does this thing that I like to call a whole bunch of healing. For example, let's absorb this repair astromech one more time. Advanced Medical Probe on the target. Boop! It does 55k healing. Whoa, that's a lot of heals. It's a lot of heals. Very nice. Very, very nice. However, it has a small drawback of having a little bit of a cooldown here. So you can see it has like a 12-second cooldown, so you can't be spamming it all the time. Unless, we mentioned previously, when we use our Supercharged Cell, it now has no cooldown. So you could do something crazy, like if you throw your crits down, and then you hit Supercharged Cell, you can use your instant cast for a big crit, and then spam your Advanced Medical Probe over and over and over again for the next 8 seconds. It's a very nice way to chunk out a whole bunch of burst healing. Just be aware that it might destroy your cells. But what if it didn't have to destroy your cells, right? What if there was a way to reduce the cells it consumed? Well, I'm glad you asked me, because that's where Medical Probe comes into play. Medical Probe is a 1.5 second cast time, which is a pretty relatively fast cast. However, it doesn't do a whole lot of healing here. You can see it was critting for like 30k, not great, not terrible, and on average it's going to do like 15k healing. So, it could be better, it could be worse. It's critting a fair bit here, so it's like not bad. It's more of a filler ability than anything else. However, it is slowly building these 3 stacks of field triage. What field triage does is it will make the Advanced Medical Probe consume less cells. So typically Advanced Medical Probe consumes 20 cells, but you can see right here, because I have 3 stacks of field triage, it will now only consume 5 cells, boop, and do basically, no damage to our cells. It's pretty fantastic. So the more we spam our Medical Probe up to 3 times, it will make our Advanced Medical Probe cost less. It's pretty fantastic. Let's wrap through all these interactions one more time very quickly. Successive treatment builds a whole lot of cells very quickly, does both single target and AoE healing. We want to be hitting this as often as possible. When you hit Supercharged Cell, your Advanced Medical Probe will have no cooldown. When you hit back to infusion, your Advanced Medical Probe will be instantly cast. If you spam enough medical probes, your Advanced Medical Probe will cost less cells. which means you can do something crazy like throwing it back to Infusion on the target, hit Supercharged Cell, and then be spamming Advanced Medical Probe like a madman for crazy burst healing over the next 8 seconds. It's pretty darn nice. But most of that is just like single target healing. What are we doing when we talk about AoE healing? Well, we talked about previously where we have our successive treatment that we're going to be spamming pretty consistently, and then we have our Culto Bomb. Now, Culto Bomb does not do a whole lot of healing at the surface, right? It's just like 15k. Not great, not great. However, Culto Bomb is gigantic. It's huge. You can get your entire raid group inside of this Culto Bomb. So even though it's only doing like 15k healing to your one person, that multiplied over 8 people is like 100k healing over the course of like one ability, which is nice. It also has a very short cooldown. So it only has like a 5.5 second cooldown, so you can go like a Culto, and then you can go successive treatment, and then you can have one little filler, and then back into a Culto for a fair bit of AoE healing. Now, it's not perfect. It's not like operative rate AoE healing. However, it's a good option when the group is starting to get chunked. So don't forget about ye old Culto Bomb. It's a pretty good ability, especially in like a raid environment. Speaking of good abilities, there's one ability that I have not covered yet that I'm sure you Commando healers are yelling at me about, and that is this ability here called Trauma Probe. How Trauma Probe works is that if I apply a Trauma Probe to this target, you can see he now has a little buff here that says Trauma Probe. It will heal on damage taken. 7 stacks total. Every time the target gets attacked, he will be healed for a small amount of healing. How small? Well, it only heals for like 5.3k, which is like not great, not terrible, until you start doing the math. Because we have this little thing here called efficient probes, which means that every time that a trauma probe heals the target, there's a 25% chance that it doesn't consume a cell. What that means is that you're averaging like 9 probes on the target every single time, which is not great, not terrible. And then you add that to the fact that without any single crits, that's like 45,000 healing for just one ability. That's a lot of healing. That's a lot of healing. And if you get lucky with your crits, you can do like 100k healing with a single trauma probe. It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. A lot of people will either be refreshing at one trauma probe or they'll wait for it to entirely fall off and then put it back on. Just in general, keep your trauma probes up, por favor. It does a whole lot of healing and it's preventative. This way, we're not being as reactive when the damage comes in. We can throw this on everyone and then say, now whenever you take damage and do something stupid, I'll already be actively healing you because I have my trauma probe on. Please, 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 please keep your trauma probes on, especially on your tanks. I'm sure they will appreciate it. All right? All right. So those are our primary healing buttons. There are 2 more that we should cover here. The first is our med shot. Med shot has no healing. It does like 8k on a crit and 5k when it's not critting. It's a pathetic amount of healing. However, it generates a stack of supercharge and it does not consume any energy cells. We want to be throwing these in here with relative frequency because as you can see, if you spam your full healing all the time, you're going to very quickly start to run out of cells. So we have to really pace ourselves and not just throw our entire burst into people because otherwise we're going to completely destroy ourselves and then we'll be sad. You have to be filling in with med shots with relative frequency to prevent this sort of situation, all right? Now, having the Supercharged Cell is nice. It helps generate a little bit of cells, and we do have our 1 get out of jail free card with our recharged cells. So you do have some like get out of jail cards. However, once those are gone, you really have to be paying attention, all right? Don't just be spamming heals all the time. Pace yourselves, all right? It's a marathon, not a sprint, especially in healing. Pace, 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 pace. Don't go too ballistic unless you absolutely need to, all right? Finally, you healers, por favor, field aid is a cleanse. You will cleanse tech, mental, or physical effects. What this means is that if you see a target that is currently bleeding or has a dot on them, please, please, please use your cleanse. You're going to save yourself from doing a lot of healing. It's a great way to prevent taking a whole bunch of damage. Use your cleanse, use your cleanse, use your cleanse. I cannot stress this enough. Now, you'll learn over the course of doing the fights what you need to cleanse and what you don't need to cleanse. But for example, in the opening boss of Hammer Station, if you ever see the tank die, it's probably because the healer didn't cleanse at 6 stacks with a massive laser. All right? All right, so if you're just getting into healing, Cleanse the 6 stacks of massive laser, all right? You'll thank me later. Okay. So let's wrap up one quick time before we jump into things, and then we'll do like a Nim Nephra, and then we'll do a little commentary, and then we'll call it a day, all right? So, Supercharged Cell, smash it as often as possible. Successive treatment generates 4 stacks supercharged, does a whole bunch of AoE and straight up healing. It's very, very nice. Medical Probe generates 2 stacks of cells. It also generates these 3 stacks of field triage to reduce the cooldown of, or reduce the energy cost of our advanced medical probe. Back to Infusion does a fair bit of healing, is made a crit by Supercharged Cell, and will make your advanced medical probe auto crit. Cast instantly. It's very, very nice. Then we can be filling in with our Cultibomb for big AoE hills, and then spending our med shots here and there to make sure that we're not completely destroying our cells. Please cleanse whenever applicable. Quick note on offensive cooldowns. Reactive Shield is going to reduce the damage you take. Every time you take damage, you will slowly build a stack of trauma regulators, which will then heal you when it expires. It's a great little ability. Adrenaline Rush will rapidly heal you up to 35% of your health if you drop below that, or if you have Adrenaline Surge up to 60% of your health. It's a great little way to prevent death. Finally, Echoing Deterrence is a great reflect button. It'll reflect half the damage that's done to you and then heal you for 5% of your health every time that it ticks. It's nice, all right? We don't have a lot of defensive cooldowns in this spec. Just heal yourself. That's your defensive cooldown. Heal buttons, all right? The big green buttons. All right, let's hop into an Nephra and then see how it goes. All right, we'll do a little commentary. We'll call it that. All right, be right back. All right. Prepping for a fight as a healer is relatively straightforward. Just apply your trauma probes to everyone and then make sure you have 10 stacks and you should be ready to rock and roll. A lot of times what you could do is you can open with an Electronet into a high impact bolt and then pop your raid buff to help your DPS start fluffing, and then you should be ready to rock and roll. You're going to see here sometimes disaster strikes and the boss gets turned around. The whole point about healing is dealing with the most important issue at the moment. For example, if the boss gets turned around, it's probably most important that you do a little bit of AoE healing, right? We don't really care about pumping heals into the tanks when the tanks aren't taking healing or taking damage. You gotta handle the most important crisis at the moment. This is essentially most of what healing is. It's a lot of crisis management from people that don't know what they're doing, which is kind of sad. However, we're the healers. We have the abilities to fix all the problems, to heal all the boo-boos that the DPS get by, standing in stupid. So, your job is to go into every fight and to start to learn what's the most important and most dangerous thing that might kill your group. We want to be prioritizing handling those situations before everything else. For example, in Nim Nephra, the most dangerous thing to your group is going to be that dot. If that dot doesn't get cleansed, you need to cleanse it right away, otherwise people die. So, prioritize the most dangerous, thing at the moment. This is why heal parses don't really matter. A lot of the times, healing, if the team isn't dead, that's kind of the only metric that you can use to I did a good job. Now, of course, there's a bare minimum that you should try to be hitting when you're going to heal numbers. However, they can be kind of deceptive. For example, operative healers right now are just pumping all the heals in the world compared to Commandos and Sorks. So it's not really fair to compare apple to apples unless you need the raw healing output. However, healing parses, if the team's alive and you clear, then who cares about your parse? It's kind of sad that we don't get to go for the big number, but if the DPS are nice, they'll stand and stuff and fluff their heal parse for you, all right? That's a complete lie. If a DPS tells you that, tell them that they're stupid, all right? Tell them that they take enough damage as it is. You can kind of throw your flame back to the DPS, especially the DPS. DPS are all afraid that one day they'll get benched to heals, and so they really want to keep you happy so that way you don't want to ask to DPS one day. So you have my full permission to flame all of your DPS for being bad, especially when they stand in stupid things, because their bad decisions become your problems, all right? So flame them to your heart's content. It's kind of just the way it is, all right? All right, love to see it. You can kind of see why there's no set priority system here when it comes to actually doing healing in this spec. Frankly, the healing isn't that difficult. It's just hit the green buttons. If you're actively hitting the green buttons, you'll be fine. Smash Supercharge whenever it glows. When you need AoE, throw it in your cultos or your successive scans. If you need single target, use your emergency probe in your advanced scans. It's pretty straightforward. Now, brief demonstration in a few seconds here of why you shouldn't try to do the tank mechanics even when the tank fails, because you get one tapped for all of your health bar, even if you try to step in and intervene for the tank that died. you're still probably going to get one tapped if you're not careful. So just, be careful. All right? All right. At the end of the day, though, a clear is a clear. It kind of is what it is. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I'm sure your fellow players would appreciate it. I'll get back to you as soon as physically possible. That's all I have. You take care now, all right? Bye-bye.